The snow had already started by the time we pulled into Gran's driveway. Not the pretty kind, the kind that comes sideways off Lake Ontario and gets into everything. Your collar, your eyelashes, the gap between your boot and your sock. My daughter Lily was asleep in her car seat, one mitten off, her mouth slightly open the way it always is when she's out cold. She'd been so excited the whole drive up from Oshawa. She'd made a card for Gran, drawn a Christmas tree on it with so much green crayon the paper had gone waxy and stiff. I remember sitting there for a second before I turned the engine off, just looking at the house. Every window was lit up. Through the front bay window, I could see silhouettes moving around. Hear something, not words, just that particular hum of a big family in a warm room. My uncle's truck was in the driveway, my aunt's van, my parents' Subaru. My husband James had taken our other car straight from work. He'd texted me 40 minutes earlier, running late, just leaving Mississauga now. Be there by 7. So it was just me and Lily. I unbuckled her carefully, got her onto my shoulder without waking her, grabbed the bag of gifts with my free hand, and walked to the front door. I didn't knock. This was Gran's house. I'd been coming here my whole life. The door opened before I even reached it. My mother was standing there, not with the door wide open the way you open a door for someone you're expecting. She had it pulled to, just enough to fit herself in the frame, one hand on the knob. She was dressed up. The good blouse, the pearl earrings she saves for Christmas. She looked at me, then at Lily on my shoulder, then back at me. "Oh," she said, "just that." "Hey, Mum," I smiled. "Can you grab the bag? My hands are kind of full." She didn't move to take the bag. She looked back over her shoulder, then at me again, and she said, "We're actually at capacity tonight, sweetheart." I thought I'd misheard her. The wind was doing something loud in the spruce trees at the side of the house. "Sorry? Gran's living room only holds so many people comfortably. We've got your aunt and uncle, the cousins, your father's colleagues from the firm. His colleagues are here on Christmas Eve, and it's just a lot of bodies in a small space. You understand?" I stood there in the snow with my sleeping daughter on my shoulder, and I said very quietly, "Mum, this is Gran's house. I know that. She invited us." "I know that. She invited us." "I know, but—" She lowered her voice. "It's been a long day, and Gran tires easily, you know that. Maybe it's better if you two just head home, and we do something in the new year. A lunch, or, Mum. It'll be calmer, less overwhelming for everyone." Lily stirred on my shoulder, shifted, made a small sound. I stood there another 3 seconds. I don't know what I was waiting for. For her to laugh and say she was kidding. For my father to appear behind her and wave us in. For anything except what actually happened, which was her beginning to close the door. "Okay," I said. My voice came out very even. I don't know how. "Okay." And I walked back to the car. I got Lily buckled back in without waking her. Got in the driver's seat. Put the key in the ignition and then just sat there with my hands in my lap. The bag of Christmas gifts was still on my arm. I'd forgotten to put it down. I set it on the passenger seat. Looked at it. There was a wooden ornament in there. I'd driven to 3 different stores in Whitby to find a little red canoe. Because Gran always talks about the summers her and Grandpa spent up at their friend's cottage on Georgian Bay. I'd had Lily's name engraved on one side and Gran's on the other. I thought she'd love it. I started the car. I pulled out of the driveway, and I drove maybe 4 blocks, and then I pulled over on a side street between 2 snowbanks, and I just sat there. Lily woke up in the back. She looked out the window at the dark street and said, "Are we at Gran's?" "Not yet, baby. When are we going?" "I'm not sure." She was quiet for a moment. "Then, does Gran know we're coming?" "She invited us, yeah." "Then why aren't we coming?" "She invited us, yeah." "Then why aren't we there?" I didn't have an answer for that. I told her we were just taking a little break. She seemed to accept this with the complete pragmatism of a 5-year-old and went back to looking out the window. I was staring at the dashboard. I was thinking about my brother Marcus and whether he was in that room right now. I was thinking about how last Easter he told our parents that James and I were a lot at family events, and how I'd found out about it 3 months later from my cousin, not from anyone who might have thought to mention it to me. I was thinking about how Marcus has never once been told no by either of our parents, not once in 37 years, and how every time something goes wrong in his life, they've somehow found a way to make it adjacent to something I did. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. Unknown number. Ontario area code I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. I don't know why I picked up. Hello? Is this Vivienne? The voice was sharp, alert, not a voice that belonged to someone calling to sell me an extended warranty. Yes, who's this? It's your Gran. I sat up. Gran? This isn't your number. I'm calling from Patrice's phone. My phone is on the charger upstairs, and I needed to reach you. Where are you? Your father just told me you called to say you weren't feeling well. My stomach dropped about 6 inches. He said, what? That you and James had a stomach thing going around, and you decided to stay home. I was just about to have someone bring you a plate tomorrow. A pause. You don't sound sick. I'm not sick, Gran. Another pause. Longer. Then where are you? I told her. I told her I was parked 4 blocks away. I told her what my mother had said at the door. I tried to say it the way you'd report facts to someone, levelly, without editorializing. But by the time I got to the part about Lily asking if Gran knew we were coming, my voice had done something I hadn't given it permission to do. Gran was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you turn this car around right now. Her voice wasn't loud. It was the opposite of loud. It was the voice she uses when she's finished discussing something. Gran, I don't want to cause a scene. Vivienne Marie, you turn this car around. I drove back. I lifted Lily out of the car again. She was wide awake now, asking questions I didn't have the bandwidth to answer, and I walked up to the front door. I knocked this time. My father answered. He took one look at me, and the expression on his face was not surprise. It was something that wasn't quite guilt and wasn't quite annoyance, but lived in the neighborhood of both. Vivienne, Gran called me. I said it quietly. She wants us inside. He stepped back. I walked in. The house smelled like pine and the specific turkey gravy Gran makes every year with the drippings and a splash of something I've never been able to identify. The hallway was full of coats. Lily immediately perked up because there was a small tabletop tree on the hall table with those little battery-powered lights she loves. My aunt was the first person to see me come in. She was standing near the fireplace with a glass of wine, and she went very still. My mother was at the kitchen doorway. She looked at me, then over my head at my father. Marcus was on the couch. He'd been laughing at something. He stopped when he saw me. Gran was in her chair. The good one. The high-backed burgundy one, near the window that nobody else ever sits in. She had her hands folded in her lap, and she was watching the room the way she always does. Not participating in it, exactly, but tracking it, cataloging it. She saw me, and she said, there she is. Like I just stepped out to grab something from the car. Lily wriggled away from me and ran across the room and climbed directly into Gran's lap, which Gran has never once objected to. Gran wrapped an arm around her and kissed the top of her head and said, Merry Christmas, my love. And Lily said, Gran, we almost didn't come, and the room got very quiet. Gran looked up. I know, she said. That was a misunderstanding, wasn't it? It was not a question. My mother made a sound that was the beginning of a sentence. Gran looked at her, just looked at her, and whatever the sentence was going to be, it didn't happen. James arrived 40 minutes later, straight from work, still in his work jacket. He came in the front door, and I met him in the hallway, and he took one look at my face and said, what did I miss? Very quietly, and I said, I'll tell you later. And he nodded and didn't push it. He's good that way. Dinner was fine on the surface. The turkey was good. The mashed potatoes were the ones Gran makes with about half a block of cream cheese that nobody in this family has ever admitted to finding obscene, but everyone eats twice. Lily sat between me and Gran and ate approximately 11 dinner rolls and nothing else, and I let it go because it was Christmas. Marcus sat across from me. He was charming at dinner the way he always is. Funny, self-deprecating, the best version of himself in rooms where he feels appreciated. His wife was on his left. She talked mostly to my aunts. My mother had recovered. She was pouring wine and asking about people's work, and the conversation moved the way it does when everyone has agreed without saying anything that we're not going to talk about, the thing we're all aware of. Gran ate quietly. She spoke when she wanted to. She listened when she didn't. After dessert, a bouchée de Noël my cousin had brought from a bakery in Port Hope. Gran said she was a little tired and would someone mind helping her upstairs. My uncle moved to get up. Gran looked at me. Vivienne, love, would you help me? And bring Lily. Marcus said something light. Monopolizing the grandkids, Gran. He smiled. Gran looked at him for a beat too long. I suppose I am, she said pleasantly, and turned back to me. Lily fell asleep in Gran's guest room in about 4 minutes flat, still in her Christmas dress, one shoe on. I tucked her in with the spare blanket and left the little salt lamp on the nightstand because she hates the dark. Gran was sitting on the edge of her own bed when I came back. She'd taken her earrings off. She had that look she gets sometimes. Not tired, exactly, like she's making a calculation. Sit down, she said. I sat in the chair by the window. Outside, the snow was still coming down. The street was quiet. I want to tell you something, she said, and I want you to let me finish before you say anything. Okay, I am 81 years old, and I have watched this family for 81 years, which is longer than most of you have been alive. She folded her hands in her lap. I know things people assume I don't know. I know who borrowed money from your grandfather's estate account before it was settled and didn't mention it. She looked at me steadily. I know it wasn't you. I went very still. Gran, I said, let me finish. I closed my mouth. 3 months ago, I had my solicitor come in. I'd been thinking about it for a while. The timing lined up. She reached over to the nightstand and picked up a small envelope, the kind that comes with a greetings card. She held it, but didn't give it to me. Do you know why we almost lost the cottage in 2019? The cottage on Sparrow Lake. The family had had it since 1974. There'd been some issue that year, and suddenly it had been sold. And nobody had ever quite explained to me how that had happened because the topic had always seemed to agitate my father in a particular way that made people stop asking. I was told it was taxes or something with the maintenance costs. There were no unusual maintenance costs. Gran set the envelope back on the nightstand. Your brother took out a loan against the title, without telling me. He'd got into some difficulty with an investment, and he needed collateral. By the time I found out, the interest had grown to the point where the simplest solution was to sell. I stared at her. He was very sorry, she said, in the tone of a woman who has heard the word sorry about 900 times and has done the math on what it's worth. Your parents felt terrible. There was a lot of family discussion. I was asked to consider how hard things had been for Marcus at the time. He'd had a rough year. She paused. Your grandfather had died the previous spring. That was a hard year for all of us. I didn't say anything. This autumn, Gran said. My solicitor, a very capable woman, I should tell you, your grandfather picked well. She called me. She said she'd noticed something in the paperwork I'd asked her to organize around my investment accounts. A transfer request, dated October. The routing wasn't to anyone named in my accounts. She picked up the envelope again. It was to a numbered company. She flagged it because I hadn't signed off on it. I felt cold. The kind of cold that doesn't have anything to do with temperature. How did someone? My online banking credentials, Gran said simply. I'd written them in the little blue book in my desk downstairs. I know. Your cousin set up the account for me years ago, and I could never remember the password. I should have changed it. I hadn't thought to. Gran. I leaned forward. Did you go to the police? I spoke to my solicitor. She spoke to the bank. The transfer had been flagged and not completed. The bank's fraud department had caught it, so the money didn't actually go anywhere. She looked at me, but someone had tried. The room was very quiet. My solicitor, Gran said, being a thorough person, had also been reviewing some of the other documentation I'd given her for the estate planning, and she found some things that, well, let's say the picture became clearer. She finally held the envelope out to me. You don't have to open that tonight, but I want you to know what it is. I've made some changes to my will. Your parents know that changes were made. They don't know the specifics. She held my gaze. I wanted you to know first. I looked at the envelope in my hands. It was sealed. My name on the front in Gran's handwriting. The particular way she makes the V, she taught me cursive, the same way her mother had taught her. Gran, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. There's a difference at my age. She reached over and patted my hand once. Now, tell me about Lily's kindergarten. I want to hear something nice. I came back downstairs about 40 minutes later. The cousins had claimed the living room. My aunt and uncle were getting their coats on. James was at the kitchen table with a mug of tea looking at his phone, and he looked up when I came in and smiled. My parents were in the kitchen. My mother was doing dishes. My father was drying them. Marcus was still on the couch. James stood up and touched my arm quietly. You okay? He said, just to me. Yeah, I said. I will be. Gran came downstairs about 20 minutes later, which surprised everyone because she'd said she was tired. She was wearing her housecoat and her reading glasses were pushed up on her head, the way she does when she's working something out. She asked everyone who was leaving to wait a moment. My aunt and uncle paused at the door. My father set down the dish towel. Marcus looked up from his phone. I've been meaning to do something for a while, Gran said, standing in the living room archway, and I've decided this is the right time. I know it's Christmas Eve. I know it's late, but I've learned not to wait on things. She looked around the room. My solicitor will be sending formal letters in the new year, but I didn't want anyone to be surprised. She was very calm. She didn't raise her voice. She was, in that moment, the most composed person in the room by a significant margin, and she is 81 years old and was in her housecoat. She said that she'd reviewed her estate plan, that she'd made adjustments that she felt reflected, accurately, the relationships and contributions that had shaped her life, that her house in Coburg, this house, the one we were standing in, and her remaining investment accounts would be going to me, that the Sparrow Lake property, which she had repurchased quietly in 2021, I had not known this, would be held in trust for Lily until Lily turned 25. She said that this was not a punishment. She said it calmly, looking at no one in particular. She said it was simply what made sense to her. The kitchen had gone completely silent. I could hear the furnace. My mother made a sound. Marcus said, Gran. I'm not finished, Gran said pleasantly. He stopped. She said that she wanted to say one more thing, and that was this. She was aware that Vivian and her family had almost not been here tonight. She said she understood there had been some kind of mix-up about whether there was room. She looked at my mother when she said this. She looked at my mother for a long time. There is always room, Gran said, for the people I love. And then she said she was going to bed, wished everyone a Merry Christmas, and walked back upstairs. James drove us home around midnight. Lily slept the whole way. The card she'd made for Gran still in her coat pocket because she'd forgotten to give it to her. James had one hand on the wheel and one on the gear shift, and he didn't say anything for the first 10 minutes. Just let the highway unspool in the headlights. The snow down to a dusting now. The road dark and quiet. Eventually, he said, Do you want to talk about it? Not yet, I said. Okay, a few more minutes. She bought back the cottage, I said. In 2021, she never told anyone. James absorbed this. The one on Sparrow Lake? Yeah, he thought about this. She's something else, he said. She really is. Lily made a small noise in her sleep. James glanced in the rearview mirror and then back at the road. I had the envelope in my bag. I hadn't opened it yet. I didn't need to, not tonight. Tonight, I just wanted to be in the car with my husband and my daughter, going home, watching the highway lights. I thought about Gran in her burgundy chair. The way she'd looked at my mother, not angry, not triumphant, just clear. Like she'd decided something a long time ago and was simply carrying it out. I thought about something she'd said upstairs when I'd tried to tell her she didn't have to do any of this. She'd waved her hand and said, I've been watching a long time, Vivian. I just hadn't decided when to stop watching and start acting. Lily woke up somewhere on the 115 and said sleepily, Did I miss Christmas? No, baby, I said. Christmas is tomorrow. Did Gran like her present? I'd left the wooden ornament with Gran, the little red canoe. She turned it over in her hands and read both names on it, and then held it against her chest for a moment without saying anything. She loved it, I said. Lily nodded, satisfied, and went back to sleep. I leaned my head against the window and watched the dark trees go by, and I thought, some things take a long time to be made right. And sometimes they get made right at midnight on Christmas Eve in a room full of people who thought they knew how the story was going to go. Sometimes an 81-year-old woman in a housecoat is the one who decides the ending, and she doesn't need to raise her voice to do it. I've thought about that driveway a lot since Christmas Eve. The snow coming sideways, Lily on my shoulder, my mother's hand on the door. 4 seconds, maybe 5, between when I understood what was happening and when I turned around and walked back to the car. 4 seconds to absorb something that, if I'm honest, had been a long time coming. I don't think what happened that night was random. I think it was the accumulated weight of 100 smaller things finally finding somewhere to land. Every time I'd shown up and been made to feel like I was asking for something I didn't deserve. Every time Marcus had taken something, the cottage, the trust, the credit, and no one had said a word. Every time I had swallowed it and kept going because keeping going felt like the only option I had. What I've learned, slowly and not always gracefully, is that the people who keep going quietly are often the ones who get used quietly. Not because they're weak, because they're decent, because they assume that decency is shared and sometimes it isn't. And there's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from extending good faith to people who've quietly decided they don't need to return it. But Gran was watching. She'd been watching for a long time. That's the part that stays with me. Not the will, not the house, not any of the formal things she'd set in motion before we even arrived that night. It's that she'd been paying attention in a room full of people who assumed she wasn't. She'd noticed what was taken and who had taken it. She'd noticed who showed up anyway, year after year, with a handmade card and a wooden ornament and a 5-year-old who wanted to give Gran a hug. She'd kept her own account of things, not out of resentment, but out of clarity. I think about Lily asking, from the back seat, "Does Gran know we're coming?" She didn't understand why we'd left. She just knew that Gran had invited us, and if Gran had invited us, there must be room. That's 5-year-old logic, and it turns out it was also the correct logic. Gran had always made room. She just hadn't always been the one at the door. What I want to carry forward from that night, and this is something I'm still working out, is the difference between patience and passivity. Gran was patient for decades. She watched, she noted, she waited for the right moment. That is not the same as accepting mistreatment. That is not the same as pretending things are fine when they aren't. There is a version of quiet that is dignified and deliberate, and there is a version that is just fear wearing a calm face. I spent a long time in the second category. I'm trying to live more in the first. The other thing I keep coming back to is this: the choices we make. The small ones, the daily ones, the ones nobody sees. They don't disappear. They collect. Marcus made choices for years that he assumed would stay buried. I made choices to keep showing up even when it cost me something. Neither set of choices stopped mattering just because no one was talking about them out loud. Gran used to say, when I was small, that you can tell the shape of a person's character by what they do when they think no one's looking. She was right about that. She was also, it turns out, always looking. I'm not sure I have a tidy conclusion to offer. Life rarely hands those over, but I'll take a Christmas Eve where an 81-year-old woman in a housecoat stood in her living room and said there is always room for the people I love, and meant it in every sense of the word. That's enough. That's more than enough to carry into the new year.